Hi, happy National Authors Day. My name is Dr. Felicia Berry Mitchell, or Dr. Felicia for short. I am a psychologist, an author, speaker, a trauma survivor, and a mental health advocate. I know I do a lot. I am here to introduce to some of you who may not be aware of my book, Building Courage and Resilience After Trauma. There's my name on the book. And to introduce to those of you who are familiar about the benefits of this book. I wrote this book from two different perspectives, as a trauma survivor and as a psychologist who is experienced in trauma work. As a trauma survivor, I talk about my traumas as a way to illustrate some ways that I've experienced trauma and have recovered from them. And even before I was a trauma psychologist, the things that I was doing to heal my trauma, and I was unaware of it at the time. But I talk about my journey in healing, as well as coping skills for trauma and education. Actually, maybe reverse that. Education first, because what I've noticed over the years as a trauma psychologist is that many people are stuck on the stigma of trauma or PTSD, and that really does adversely affect their ability to engage in the treatment because of the stigma. So understanding that experiencing a traumatic experience or having PTSD does not mean that you're weak or something is wrong with you. It means that your brain has been changed. Like after trauma, our brains are different, right? If you do a scan of your brain before a traumatic event and after it, it's a very different image. And so understanding that helps people to reduce that stigma, be able to engage in treatment in a way that helps them to reclaim their lives. Part of that recovery, though, is also having coping skills that work so that in those moments when you are triggered by your trauma, whether it's a flashback, a thought, a smell, if it's, running into someone who reminds you of your perpetrator or who reminds you of someone that you were engaged in that trauma, those coping skills help you to bring you back to the present so that you can continue to do the work of trauma, so that you can remind your brain that, guess what, this may be similar, but it's not the same thing. This thing that is similar is not a danger to me. It's not the same danger as we experienced before. And so it's those coping skills that allow you to engage in treatment, to do the work, so that you can retrain your brain, because that's what needs to happen. Our brains have been changed after trauma. And as we do the work of retraining our brains, then we can reclaim our lives. Then we are building courage and we are building resilience after those traumatic experiences. So in the book, I talk about that. I talk about, again, my journey with traumas. I talk about education, which is so important, as well as coping skills. And I talk about the 3 recommended treatments for PTSD that are advisable by the National Center for PTSD. And so those are, in case you were wondering, cognitive processing therapy, prolonged exposure, as well as eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, or EMDR. These have varying lengths of treatment, but they've all been proven to reduce PTSD symptoms significantly. Those are not the only 3 treatments, of course, that you can use to reduce your PTSD symptoms. There are plenty of others. I would just make sure that you vet your provider to know that they have experience with trauma work and that they are using a therapy or a treatment that is recommended and is beneficial, okay? But there's also things like equine therapy, working with horses, that it can be a great adjunct to this work. Cognitive behavioral therapy for trauma. There are different formats, but just make sure you use one that's been vetted and is known to work. And then then the book ends with talking about how do you sustain your healing, because the great thing about the brain is that it's constantly learning. And so you have to remember to engage in life in a way that says, I'm a healer, I'm a thriver, I'm not a victim. And that's an important part of recovery, is remembering that we are more than our traumatic experiences, right? The trauma has changed us. And I think what I've learned from my own experiences, but also working with people who've had and recovered from traumatic experiences, that, you know what, but I'm more resilient. I have more courage than I ever knew I could even experience. And so that's actually how the book got its title. is over the years working with people and seeing them being more resilient and more courageous than they ever imagined. And so it's like, how do you make meaning of your life and those experiences so that those things don't control you, but you gain knowledge and you use it for your advantage? All right. So again, happy National Authors Day. I'm Dr. Felicia. Hopefully you'll buy the book because I wrote it for you if you're a trauma survivor, as well as for those who have loved ones who have experienced trauma and they don't understand what's going on. They don't know how to help them. And so having the book is a great way to understand trauma, to help support your loved one. And so you can find it on Amazon, or you can also reach out for a copy, but Amazon's probably your best bet.